A struggling single dad saved a girl from bikers. She turned out to be the daughter of a powerful CEO. There's something about small towns and second chances, something almost magical. Maybe it's the way the streets feel familiar, like they're holding on to memories long forgotten. Or maybe it's the way people find their way back to what truly matters, even when they least expect it. This is a story about love, resilience, and the unexpected turns that bring people together. A story about a man who thought he had lost everything, and a woman who had spent her life running from her own heart, until fate, or perhaps something greater, pulled them onto the same path. If you believe in the power of love, in the quiet, miracles of kindness, and in stories that leave you feeling warm long after the last word is read, then this one is for you. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story that might just restore your faith in love. Now let's begin. Nathan Cole wiped the grease off his hands with an old rag, his muscles aching from a long day at the garage. The smell of motor oil clung to his worn-out flannel shirt, a scent that had become as much a part of him as the scars on his hands. Another day, another broken-down car, another bill barely paid. He glanced at the clock. On the wall, 7:45 p.m. He needed to pick up Lucas from his friend's house before it got too late. Stepping outside, the evening air was crisp, the sky painted in soft hues of lavender and gold. The streets of Willow Creek, a quiet town nestled between rolling hills and endless fields, were mostly empty, save for a few headlights in the distance. Nathan loved the silence. It was a far cry from the chaos of his past, the roaring flames, the panicked screams, the weight of failure pressing down on his chest. He shook the memories away. Tonight was just another ordinary night, or so he thought, as he pulled his old Chevy truck onto the highway. His eyes flickered to the gas station on the corner. There, under the harsh white glow of the fluorescent lights, stood a small figure. A girl, no older than 7 or 8, her golden curls bouncing as she clutched a stuffed bear to her chest. She looked frightened, her big blue eyes darting. Around, searching, Nathan's gut twisted. Where were her parents? Then he saw them. A group of men in leather jackets lingered nearby, their bikes lined up along the curb. Something about the way they watched the girl made Nathan's pulse quicken. They weren't just passing through, they were circling her. Like wolves, their grins laced with something dark, something predatory. Nathan's hands gripped the steering wheel. He had seen this before, men like these preying on the vulnerable, using fear as currency. And in his bones, he knew that if he drove away now, if he ignored this feeling, something terrible would happen. He pulled into the gas station and cut the engine. Nathan wasn't the kind of man who charged into situations blindly. Years of firefighting had trained him to assess before acting. He stepped out of his truck casually, pretending to stretch as he scanned the scene. The girl was standing near the vending machines, her small hands trembling as she clutched her bear. One of the bikers, a tall man with a snake tattoo curling around his neck, took a step toward her. Nathan moved before he could think. "Hey, kid," he called out, his voice steady but loud enough to carry. "Everything okay?" The girl's wide eyes locked onto his, desperate, pleading. She hesitated before nodding, but the fear in her expression was unmistakable. The tattooed man turned, sizing Nathan up. His smirk was slow and condescending. "Something you need, buddy?" Nathan kept his stance relaxed, but his tone was firm. "Just making sure she's all right." Another biker, a stocky man with a jagged scar down his cheek, scoffed. "She's waiting for her ride. Ain't that right, sweetheart?" He winked at the girl, who flinched, Nathan's jaw clenched. "Lying bastards." He turned his gaze back to the girl. "Where's your mom, kid?" She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know. I lost her." That was all Nathan needed to hear. Nathan didn't have a badge. He wasn't a cop. But that had never stopped him before. "All right, kiddo, Let's find her. He took a step toward her, deliberately putting himself between her and the bikers. Tattoo Neck's smirk vanished. I don't think that's necessary, hero. Nathan met his gaze, unwavering. Yeah, I think it is. A tense silence stretched between them. Nathan knew the type. Men who thrived on intimidation, on being the biggest threat in the room. But he also knew something else. Bullies didn't like resistance. Nathan was 6'2", built from years of hauling bodies out of burning buildings, of carrying the weight of regret and loss. His stance alone was enough to make them hesitate. Scarface exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Whatever, man, not worth the trouble. Tattoo Neck lingered a moment longer before clicking his tongue and backing off. Lucky night, hero, but next time, stay out of business that ain't yours. Nathan didn't answer. He simply turned, crouched to the girl's level, and offered his hand. Let's get you home. 15 minutes later, they were at the Willow Creek Police Department. The girl sat on a bench, her small legs swinging nervously. Nathan knelt beside her. What's your name, kid? Sophie, she whispered. A woman rushed through the front doors, her heels clicking against the tile. A tall, poised, radiating power, but her face was pale with fear. Her eyes, blue like Sophie's, were frantic, searching. Nathan stood as Eleanor Sinclair locked eyes with her daughter. Sophie! The girl launched herself into her mother's arms. Sobbing, Ellie held her tight, whispering reassurances. When she finally looked up, her gaze fell on Nathan. For a moment, she simply stared. You found her, she breathed, as if she couldn't quite believe it. Nathan nodded. She was at the gas station. Some guys were bothering her, thought I'd step in. Ellie straightened, regaining her composure. She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. I don't know how to thank you. Nathan simply shrugged. Just glad she's safe. Her brows furrowed slightly, as if his nonchalance unsettled her. Most men, Nathan guessed, would have used this moment, an opportunity to impress a woman like Eleanor Sinclair, but he wasn't most men. The silence stretched. Then finally Ellie spoke again, softer this time. At least let me do something, she insisted. Dinner, a proper thank you. Nathan almost declined, but then Sophie tugged on his sleeve, her small voice filled with hope. Please. And for reasons he didn't quite understand, Nathan found himself nodding. All right, dinner it is. As Nathan stepped outside, the cold air biting against his skin, he had the strange sense that his life, his quiet, predictable life, had just taken a turn. He had no idea how right he was. Nathan adjusted the collar of his jacket, feeling slightly out of place as he parked his truck in front of the Willow Manor, the town's most upscale restaurant. He had agreed to this dinner mostly because of Sophie's hopeful eyes, but now, standing outside the grand entrance, he couldn't help but feel like he had stepped into a world that wasn't his. The valet looked at his battered Chevy with barely concealed disdain, but Nathan ignored him. He wasn't here to impress anyone. As he stepped inside, the scent of aged wine and seared steak filled the air. Soft jazz played in the background, and the quiet hum of conversation carried through the elegant dining hall. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in a warm glow, making the polished mahogany floors gleam. Nathan exhaled. This wasn't his usual kind of place. At a corner table near the large windows, Eleanor Sinclair sat with Sophie beside her, the contrast between mother and daughter striking. Ellie, dressed in a navy blue evening dress, exuded the effortless elegance of a woman used to commanding boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. Sophie, however, looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, her face lighting up only when she spotted Nathan. "Nathan!" Sophie called, waving enthusiastically. Ellie turned, her sharp blue eyes softening as she met his gaze. "Mr. Cole." She stood, offering a polite but reserved smile. "I'm glad you came." Nathan gave her a nod before pulling out a chair. "Didn't seem like I had much of a choice," he said lightly, glancing at Sophie. The little girl giggled. swinging her legs beneath the table. "I told Mommy you had to come. You saved me. That means we're friends now." Nathan arched an eyebrow. Friends. He wasn't sure what to make of that. Ellie cleared her throat. "Sophie has a habit of making quick decisions about people," Nathan smirked. "That's so?" He turned to Sophie. "Hope you don't regret it?" She shook her head firmly. "Nope." Ellie watched the exchange, something unreadable flickering across her expression before she picked up her menu. "Let's order." Nathan wasn't sure what half the items on the menu were. Something French, something else he couldn't pronounce. He settled on steak, glancing at Ellie as she seamlessly placed an order with the waiter in a voice full of quiet authority. He knew women like her, confident, successful, used to being in control. In another life, when he had been a firefighter with a future, he might have met someone like her at a charity gala or an awards ceremony. But that wasn't his life anymore. So, "Nathan," Ellie started, folding her hands together neatly, "what exactly do you do in Willow Creek?" Nathan took a sip of water before answering. "I run a garage, fix cars, motorcycles, whatever people bring in." Ellie tilted her head slightly as if assessing him. "A mechanic." Nathan caught the hint of surprise in her tone, and something about it rubbed him the wrong way. "Yeah," he said evenly. "Did it back when I was in the fire department, too. Came in handy when the trucks needed fixing." Ellie blinked. "You were a firefighter," he nodded. "For almost 10 years. Something shifted in her expression. Curiosity, maybe even a flicker of respect. "Why did you leave?" Nathan hesitated. That was a door he rarely opened. "Long story." Ellie didn't press, but the silence between them felt heavier now. Sophie, oblivious to the undercurrents, smiled. "Lucas says your garage is super cool. Can I come see it?" Nathan chuckled. "I don't know, kiddo. Might be too greasy for someone in a fancy dress like yours." Sophie stuck out her tongue. "I don't care about grease. I want to see the cars." Ellie let out a soft sigh. "Sophie, we'll talk about that later." Nathan noticed the way Ellie's fingers tensed, slightly around her fork. It was a small thing, but it told him more than words ever could. She was used to control, used to planning everything, and Sophie, she was the one thing she couldn't control. Dinner continued with light conversation, mostly led by Sophie, who animatedly talked about her school, her love for horses, and how she thought motorcycles were way cooler than boring old limos. Nathan found himself unexpectedly entertained, stealing occasional glances at Ellie, who, despite her reserved nature, softened every time Sophie spoke, and then, just as the plates were being cleared, Ellie turned to him. "You never asked me what I do," she said. Nathan met her gaze, his lips twitching in amusement. "I figured you'd tell me if you wanted me to know." Ellie's brows lifted, as if surprised he wasn't fishing for information. "I run a financial firm. Sinclair Capital." Nathan let out a low whistle. "That's big time." Ellie nodded, but there was something tired in her expression. "It keeps me busy." Nathan didn't doubt that. He'd met plenty of people who measured their worth by the size of their bank accounts, but looking at Ellie now, he had the strange feeling that success hadn't brought her much happiness. Before he could say anything, a man approached the table. Tall, slick suit, arrogant air. "Ellie," the man said smoothly, ignoring Nathan entirely. "Didn't expect to see you here." Ellie's polite smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello, Marcus." Nathan noticed the subtle way her shoulders stiffened. Her fingers curled slightly inward. She wasn't comfortable. Marcus glanced at Sophie. "Sophie, sweetheart, how's my favorite girl?" Sophie barely looked at him. "I'm fine." Marcus's smile faltered before he turned to Ellie again. "I've been meaning to call you." Ellie's jaw tightened. "I've been busy." Nathan, sitting quietly, picked up on the tension immediately. This wasn't a friendly exchange. Ellie finally looked at Nathan as if suddenly remembering he was there. She straightened. "Nathan, this is Marcus Hensley, Sophie's father. Nathan's. Expression didn't change, but internally, something clicked into place. Marcus Hensley. The name was familiar. A businessman with a reputation for being ruthless, both in deals and in personal affairs. Nathan didn't extend his hand. Neither did Marcus. "Nice to meet you," Nathan said flatly. Marcus barely acknowledged him before turning back to Ellie. "We should talk. Just the two of us?" Ellie's lips pressed into a thin line. "Not tonight." Marcus's jaw clenched, but he forced another smile before stepping back. "We'll talk soon then." As he walked away, Sophie exhaled softly, as if relieved. Nathan didn't miss that. Ellie turned back to him. "I'm sorry about that." Nathan shrugged. "Not my business." But something told him that soon it would be. As the night ended and they stepped outside, Sophie grabbed Nathan's hand, giving him a big smile. "Can I see your garage next time?" Nathan glanced at Ellie, who hesitated before finally sighing. "We'll see," Nathan smirked. "I'll take that as a yes." Ellie rolled her eyes, but there was something almost playful in it. As Nathan drove home, he realized that somehow he was already more involved than he had planned to be. And he wasn't sure how he felt about that. Nathan wiped his hands on a grease-stained rag, the scent of motor oil thick in the air as he finished tightening the bolts on an old Mustang's engine. The garage was quiet now. Lucas had gone home with a neighbor after school. And the customer had left an hour ago. The faint ringing of the bell above the garage door caught his attention. He turned, expecting another late-night client, but instead, Eleanor Sinclair stood in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the golden glow of the streetlights. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ellie was still in her work attire, a tailored navy suit, her blonde hair pulled into a neat bun, but there was something different tonight. A hesitation in her posture, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Nathan grabbed a clean towel, wiping the grease from his palms as he leaned against the workbench. "Didn't expect to see you here." Ellie took a slow breath. "I wasn't sure I should come." Nathan arched a brow. "But you did." She glanced around, her gaze lingering on the scattered tools and the faint smell of gasoline in the air. This was a world far removed from hers, gritty, unpolished, uncomplicated. "I wanted to thank you," she said finally. "For last night." Nathan folded his arms. "Already thanked me over dinner." "Yes," Ellie admitted, "but I don't think I really did." Nathan studied her for a moment. There was something guarded in her expression, like she was standing on the edge of something she wasn't sure she should step into. "All right," he said, tilting his head. "Let's hear it." Ellie exhaled softly. "You didn't have to step in at that gas station. Most people wouldn't. But you did." Nathan shrugged. "Did what anyone should do." "That's the thing," she said quietly. "Most people don't." A heavy silence settled between them. Nathan wasn't sure what to say to that. Ellie crossed her arms, rubbing her hands against her elbows as if trying to warm herself. It was the first time he'd ever seen her look small. "Do you want to come in?" Nathan asked, jerking his chin toward the inside of the garage. Ellie hesitated, then nodded. Inside, the space was modest but orderly. The scent of oil and steel hung in the air, but there was a strange comfort in it. Unlike the pristine, lifeless boardrooms Ellie was used to, this place had character. Nathan pulled out an old wooden stool, offering it to her. "Not exactly a 5-star lounge, but it'll do." Ellie smirked, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "I think I'll manage." As she settled in, Nathan grabbed a beer from the mini-fridge in the corner. He held one up toward her in question. Ellie let out a small laugh. "Do I look like the type of woman who drinks beer in a garage?" Nathan grinned. "Nope." He twisted the cap off and took a sip. "But you look like the type who could use one anyway." Ellie considered for a moment, then sighed. "Why not?" Nathan handed her the bottle, watching as she took a small, tentative sip. She wrinkled her nose slightly, but didn't complain. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked less like Eleanor Sinclair, CEO, and more like Ellie, the woman underneath. Nathan leaned against the workbench, rolling the bottle between his hands. "So, Marcus," Ellie stiffened. "What about him?" Nathan gave a casual shrug. "He seems like a real piece of work." A humorless chuckle escaped her lips. "That's an understatement." Nathan didn't push, but after a moment, Ellie sighed. "He's Sophie's father, but that's about the extent of his involvement." Nathan didn't need to ask more. He'd seen enough men like Marcus, the kind who thought love was transactional, who used people like bargaining chips. Ellie took another sip of beer, staring at the darkened garage floor. "I married him because I thought I was supposed to. Our families had history. It was the kind of match that looked good on paper." Nathan watched her carefully. She wasn't just telling him this, she was admitting it to herself. "For a while, I convinced myself that was enough," she continued. "That if I just kept trying, I could make it work." Nathan exhaled slowly. "But it didn't." Ellie shook her head. "No, it didn't." She looked up at him then, something raw and unguarded in her expression. "By the time I realized how toxic it was, I was already pregnant, and leaving him wasn't easy." Nathan's jaw tightened. He could hear the weight behind those words. The way she said them, leaving him wasn't easy, meant there was a story there, one she wasn't ready to tell, but she had left, and that said everything. Nathan nodded. "Sophie's lucky to have you." Ellie let out a soft breath, as if releasing something heavy. "I hope she thinks so," Nathan smirked. "Kid adores you. She talks about you like you're some kind of superhero." A small, genuine smile touched Ellie's lips. "She's got a way of seeing the best in people." Nathan took another sip of his beer. "Yeah, she does." A beat of silence stretched between them. Comfortable, unrushed. Then Ellie turned to him. "And you? What's your story, Nathan Cole?" Nathan hesitated. It wasn't that he didn't want to tell her. It was just he wasn't sure where to start. Ellie must have sensed it because she softened her voice. "You said you were a firefighter." Nathan nodded. "Yeah, for a long time." And then Nathan swallowed, running a hand through his hair. "And then there was a fire." Ellie didn't speak, waiting for him to continue. "It was bad," he admitted. "Lost a guy on my team. Almost lost more." He let out a slow breath. "And I was the one calling the shots that night." Ellie's expression softened. Understanding, not pity. Nathan glanced away. "After that, it wasn't the same. Couldn't sleep, couldn't shake the feeling that I should have done something different. So I left." Ellie's voice was quiet. "That must have been hard." Nathan chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Harder than I thought it would be." Another stretch of silence. Then Ellie spoke, so softly he almost didn't hear it. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." Nathan met her gaze. There was something steady in the way she said it, as if she wasn't just saying it to make him feel better. Something in his chest loosened. "Thanks," he murmured. Ellie offered him a small smile before setting down the beer bottle. "I should go." Nathan nodded, watching as she stood, but before she left, she turned to him one last time. "You should bring Lucas over sometime. Sophie would love to see him." Nathan smirked. "That's so?" Ellie nodded. "That's what," she says. Nathan held her gaze for a beat. Then finally he nodded. "All right, we'll see." Ellie smiled. "Good night, Nathan." And as she walked out into the cool night air, Nathan realized that somehow, without meaning to, he had started to care. Nathan sat on the front porch of his small house, watching the sun dip behind the rolling hills. The warm glow of twilight bathed Willow Creek in a golden hue, and for a moment, everything felt still, peaceful. Beside him, Lucas balanced a football, On his knee, tapping it absently as he stared into the distance. "You're thinking about something," Nathan noted, stretching his legs out. Lucas shrugged, still tapping the ball. "Sophie wants me to come over." Nathan exhaled, leaning back against the wooden railing. He'd been expecting this. Ever since the unexpected dinner at Willow Manor, Sophie had apparently been relentless in asking her mother to set up another meeting. And while Ellie had extended the invitation casually, Nathan knew better. There was nothing casual about stepping into her world. Lucas finally looked up, his brown eyes hopeful. "Can we go?" Nathan hesitated. "I don't know, buddy. We're not exactly." He paused, searching for the right words. Lucas frowned. "Not exactly what?" Nathan sighed, rubbing his hands together. "They're different from us." Lucas gave him a look that only a 10-year-old could, half frustration, half disbelief. "So, who cares?" Nathan smirked despite himself. The kid had a point. Ellie stood in the grand foyer of her estate, staring out at the meticulously landscaped garden through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sophie was twirling in circles across the marble floor, humming a song to herself, her stuffed bear clutched in one hand. "I told you he would come," Sophie announced, grinning. Ellie raised a brow. "I don't recall him saying yes yet." "He will." Sophie nodded with certainty. Ellie shook her head with a soft chuckle. "And how do you know that?" Sophie stopped twirling and met her mother's gaze, her expression suddenly more serious than a 7-year-old should be. "Because he's not like the others." Ellie felt something in her chest tighten. She knew exactly what her daughter meant. Marcus had been charming in the beginning, all smooth words and grand gestures. But there had always been something performative about it, like he was playing a role rather than being real. Nathan was different. He didn't try to impress. He just was. Ellie sighed, smoothing her hands down the fabric of her dress. "We'll see, sweetheart." Sophie grinned, unconvinced. Nathan pulled up outside Ellie's estate, his hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. Lucas was practically bouncing in the passenger seat, eager to get inside. "You're acting like you just won the Super Bowl," Nathan muttered, glancing at his son. Lucas grinned. "Because it's cool, Dad. Look at this place." Nathan did. The house, no, the mansion, was a work of modern architecture, all sleek glass and sharp angles, surrounded by a perfectly manicured lawn that looked like it had never seen an out-of-place blade of grass. Nathan sighed. What the hell was he doing here? Before he could change his mind, the front door opened, and Sophie came barreling down the steps, her little legs moving faster than they should. "Lucas!" she squealed, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward the house. "Come see my room. I have a telescope and a fish and a whole shelf of books about dinosaurs." Lucas, barely able to contain his excitement, looked at Nathan for permission. Nathan sighed. "Go on, kid," Sophie cheered, dragging Lucas inside. Nathan lingered outside, for a second longer, adjusting his jacket. He could still turn around, pretend he had somewhere else to be. But then Ellie appeared at the doorway, arms crossed, watching him with a bemused expression. "You're overthinking this," she noted. Nathan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Not used to places like this," Ellie smirked. "Not used to mechanics at my dinner table either. Guess we're both stepping out of our comfort zones." Nathan chuckled. Fair enough. The house was even more extravagant inside. Soft lighting, high ceilings, furniture that looked expensive enough that Nathan was afraid to touch anything. But despite its grandeur, it felt empty. Ellie led him to the living room, where a fire flickered in the massive stone fireplace. She gestured for him to sit. "Drink?" she offered, walking toward the bar. Nathan smirked. "Got beer?" Ellie laughed softly, shaking her head. "I'm sure I can find one somewhere." She returned a moment later, handing him a bottle. Nathan took it, watching as she poured herself a glass of wine before settling across from him. A beat of silence stretched between them. Nathan leaned back, studying her. "You always this formal?" Ellie arched a brow. "You always this blunt?" Nathan grinned. Fair enough. Ellie sighed, swirling the wine in her glass. It's been a long time since I had company like this. Nathan took a sip of beer. Like what? Ellie hesitated. Then finally she gave a small, almost self-conscious shrug. Someone who doesn't care about the money, the business, the name. Nathan met her gaze, his expression unreadable. That stuff doesn't impress me. Ellie let out a breathy chuckle. Yeah, I got that. Another pause. Ellie shifted, setting her glass down. So, tell me, Nathan, what do you think of all this? Nathan exhaled slowly, glancing around. Honestly? Ellie nodded. Nathan looked her in the eye. It's beautiful, but it doesn't feel like a home. Ellie's breath hitched. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then softly she murmured, Yeah, I know. Upstairs, Sophie and Lucas were lying on the floor of her bedroom, staring up at glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I wish I had a mom like yours, Lucas said absent-mindedly. Sophie turned her head. Really? Lucas nodded. My dad's great, but sometimes I think he's lonely. Sophie frowned. Maybe our parents should get married. Lucas snorted. Yeah, that'd be weird. Sophie grinned. I think it'd be awesome. Lucas shook his head with a laugh. You're weird. Sophie rolled her eyes. I prefer visionary. As Nathan and Lucas left later that night, Ellie and Sophie stood at the doorway, watching them go. Nathan hesitated before climbing into the truck. Thanks for dinner, Ellie nodded. Thanks for coming. They stood there for a moment, neither quite sure what to say next. Finally, Nathan smirked. Sophie's got a lot of energy. Ellie exhaled a soft laugh. Tell me about it. Nathan nodded toward the house. You ever just let her run outside? Get muddy? Climb trees? Ellie blinked. Not really. Nathan shook his head, amused. We're gonna have to fix that. Ellie arched a brow. We? Nathan shrugged, climbing into his truck. You never know. As they drove away, Ellie watched them go, something warm and unfamiliar settling in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she realized she didn't feel alone. Nathan had learned to trust his gut. It had saved his life more times than he could count, back in his firefighting days, in moments where hesitation meant death. That same instinct was gnawing at him now, an unsettled feeling lodged deep in his chest. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just the way Marcus Hensley had appeared so suddenly at dinner the other night, oozing entitlement and veiled threats. It wasn't just the way Ellie's shoulders had tensed when she spoke about him, her voice carefully controlled, but laced with something else, something close to fear. It was all of it. Nathan didn't know exactly what Marcus wanted, but he knew men like him, men who wore expensive suits and smiled like predators. They weren't used to losing, and from what Nathan could tell, Marcus didn't like the fact that Ellie had walked away from him, and that meant trouble. The morning air was crisp, the sky painted in soft streaks of amber and gold. Nathan had just finished changing the oil on a customer's truck when he heard the unmistakable purr of an engine, far too smooth to belong in Willow Creek. He turned, wiping his hands on a rag, just as a sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside. The garage! Nathan exhaled slowly. Of course, Marcus Hensley stepped out, dressed in a tailored grey suit, his sunglasses shielding his eyes. His smile was polite. Too polite. Nathan tossed the rag onto the workbench and leaned against the hood of the truck. Can I help you? Marcus slid his sunglasses off, tucking them into his pocket. I figured it was time we had a chat. Nathan said nothing, watching him. Marcus took a slow step forward. You and Eleanor have been spending time together. Nathan raised a brow. Didn't realize that was your business. Marcus smirked, tilting his head slightly. Everything about Eleanor Sinclair is my business. Nathan's fingers curled into a fist, but he kept his expression unreadable. Marcus sighed dramatically, glancing around the garage with mild distaste. I have to admit, I didn't expect her to entertain the idea of slumming it in a place like this. But Eleanor's always had a soft heart, especially for lost causes. Nathan's jaw tightened, but he didn't bite. Marcus was baiting him, testing the waters. So let's make this simple, Marcus continued, adjusting his cufflinks. Eleanor and I have unfinished business, and whatever this little thing is between you two, it ends now. Nathan let the silence stretch, measuring the man in front of him. Marcus was used to getting what he wanted, used to people folding under the weight of his presence. Nathan? He'd walked through fire. He pushed off the truck, closing the space between them just enough that Marcus had to tilt his chin to meet his gaze. "Let me explain something to you, Hensley," Nathan said, his voice calm but firm. "You don't get to decide what Eleanor does, and you sure as hell don't get to decide what I do." For the first time, Marcus's mask slipped, irritation flickering across his face. Nathan took another step forward. "Now, unless you need your car fixed, I suggest you take your suit, your expensive cologne, and your bullshit somewhere else." A muscle in Marcus's jaw ticked, but he forced a smile. "All right, Cole, have it your way." He turned, walking back to his car, but before he slid inside, he glanced over his shoulder. "Enjoy your time with her while you can." Nathan watched as the car pulled away, his gut twisting tighter. This wasn't over, not even close. That evening, as Nathan drove to Ellie's house, his mind was still replaying the conversation. He hadn't told her about Marcus's visit yet. Maybe he should have. Maybe he still would. But the moment Ellie opened the front door, her expression tight, her lips pressed into a thin line, Nathan knew something was wrong. "Come in," she said quietly, stepping aside. Nathan followed her into the dimly lit living room. Sophie was upstairs, the muffled sound of her laughter drifting down the hall. Ellie turned to face him. "Marcus came to see me today." Nathan inhaled sharply. "What did he want?" Ellie let out a humorless laugh. "To remind me that he still thinks he owns me." Nathan's hands clenched. "He doesn't." Ellie met his gaze, something wary in her eyes. "He also mentioned you." Nathan exhaled. "Of course he did." "I was going to tell you," Nathan admitted. "He stopped by the garage this morning." Ellie's eyes darkened. "What did he say?" Nathan hesitated. He could tell her the truth, that Marcus had warned him to stay away, that he had practically threatened him. But Ellie already looked exhausted, already looked like she was carrying too much. So instead he said, "Nothing I couldn't handle." Ellie studied him, and for a moment Nathan thought she might press, but then she sighed, running a hand through her hair. "This is what he does. He wears people down until they give in." Nathan frowned. "Ellie, what exactly does he want?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Power, control, the satisfaction of knowing he can still make my life difficult." Nathan took a step closer. "And are you going to let him?" Ellie's eyes flickered with something, fear, determination, exhaustion, all wrapped into one. "I don't know." Nathan reached for her hand. "Ellie." She pulled back. "Nathan, this isn't your fight." Nathan's chest tightened. That wasn't true. It had become his fight the moment he pulled Sophie away from that gas station, the moment Lucas and Sophie became friends, the moment he started caring about Ellie more than he should. "Maybe not," Nathan admitted, "but I'm here, whether you like it or not." Ellie exhaled shakily, her fingers gripping the edge of the couch. "I don't want you to get hurt," Nathan smirked. "I'm a big guy. I can handle myself." Ellie looked at him then, something raw and vulnerable in her gaze. She wanted to believe him, but Nathan had the sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. Later that night, Nathan sat alone on his porch, the cold air biting at his skin. He had a choice to make: walk away before he got too deep, or stay and Fight for something, someone worth fighting for. As the stars stretched endlessly above him, Nathan already knew the answer. He wasn't going anywhere. Not now, not ever. Nathan had seen storms before. The kind that darkened the sky, sent winds howling through the trees, and ripped through everything in their path. But there were other kinds of storms. Ones that built quietly, creeping beneath the surface, until they erupted at the worst possible moment, and right now he could feel one brewing. He drove through Willow Creek's winding roads, heading toward Ellie's estate. His mind kept circling back to their last conversation, the way she had pulled away, the way her voice had tightened when she said, "Nathan, this isn't your fight." But it was, because Ellie wasn't just some woman he happened to care about. She was someone worth fighting for. And if Marcus thought he could manipulate her, intimidate her back into submission, then he was about to find out just how wrong he was. Ellie stood in her office, her fingers gripping the edge of her mahogany desk. The city skyline stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the distant glow of traffic headlights flickering like fireflies in the night. She should have felt powerful here. This was her domain, the boardrooms, the high-rise offices, the carefully calculated decisions that had built Sinclair Capital into an empire. But tonight, she didn't feel powerful at all. Tonight, she felt trapped. Her assistant had left hours ago, but Ellie remained, her mind clouded with thoughts she couldn't shake. Marcus had made himself very clear earlier that day. "Ellie, do you really want to do this the hard way? You think I won't take this to court? You think I won't make your life miserable? Walk away from Cole, and maybe I'll reconsider taking Sophie from you." Her stomach twisted at the memory. He couldn't take Sophie, could he? Ellie had fought so hard to keep her daughter away from Marcus's influence, to shield her from the cold, calculating world he thrived in. She had built a life for them, one that was stable, one that was safe, and now, with just a few words, Marcus was threatening to tear it all apart. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She turned, already knowing who it was before. She saw him. Nathan. She exhaled, steeling herself before opening the door. The moment she met his eyes, she knew she was in trouble, because Nathan Cole saw too much, and right now, she couldn't afford to let him see just how close she was to breaking. Nathan stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He took in the tension in her shoulders, the way she stood a little too straight, as if bracing herself, his gut clenched. "Marcus was here," he said, not a question but a statement. Ellie didn't react right away. Then, slowly, she turned to face him. "Yes." Nathan exhaled sharply, and Ellie crossed her arms. "And it's handled." Nathan let out a humorless chuckle. "Really? Because you don't look like someone who has it handled." Ellie's jaw tightened. "Nathan, I don't need you to fight my battles." Nathan took a step closer. "Yeah? Well, too bad, because I'm already in this." Ellie swallowed, her hands clenching at her sides. "Nathan, you don't understand. She broke off, shaking her head. Nathan's gaze softened. "Ellie, talk to me." For a moment, she almost did. For a moment, the weight of everything pressed against her ribs, threatening to crush her, and she wanted desperately to lean on him. But then she thought of Sophie, of Marcus's threats, of what was at stake, and she did what she always did. She shut down. "You need to go," she said, her voice quieter now. Nathan stared at her, his jaw tensing. "Ellie, I mean it." Nathan's hands curled into fists at his sides. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her that pushing him away wouldn't fix this, but instead he nodded once, and then he walked out the door. Because if there was one thing Nathan Cole wouldn't do, it was force himself into a fight that someone wasn't ready to have. Even if it hurt like hell to leave, Ellie sat alone in the dark office long after Nathan left. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She scrolled to Marcus's name. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She didn't want to do this. But she would do anything for Sophie, even if it meant breaking her own heart in the process. Nathan drove aimlessly through town, his mind a war zone of frustration and helplessness. Ellie was pushing him away, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't know how to fix it. He pulled into the parking lot of a bar on the outskirts of Willow Creek, shutting off the engine. He wasn't even sure why he was here. Maybe to think, maybe to stop thinking. He stepped inside, the dim lighting and low hum of conversation offering a strange kind of comfort. A few locals nodded in acknowledgement, but Nathan barely registered. Them. He ordered a drink, settling into a booth near the back, and that's when he saw him, Marcus Hensley, seated at the bar, smirking over a glass of whiskey. Nathan's blood ran hot. Marcus met his gaze, lifting his drink in mock salute. Small town, Marcus mused. Guess we were bound to run into each other again. Nathan clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay seated. What the hell are you doing here, Hensley? Marcus chuckled, swirling his drink. Enjoying the scenery, making friends. You know the usual. Nathan leaned forward. You're playing a dangerous game, Marcus smiled lazily. And you're playing a game you've already lost. Nathan's hands tightened around his glass. Marcus took a slow sip of his whiskey, then set it down with a smirk. Ellie called me tonight. Nathan stilled. Marcus's smirk widened. Told me she's reconsidering everything. Nathan's stomach twisted, because he knew Marcus was telling the truth. And worse, Ellie was falling right into his trap. Nathan stormed, out of the bar, his pulse pounding. He had walked away once tonight. He wasn't about to do it again. Pulling out his phone, he dialed Ellie's number. It rang, once, twice. Then, Nathan. Her voice was tired, shaken. Nathan gripped the steering wheel, inhaling sharply. Don't do this, Ellie. She hesitated. Nathan, don't let him win. Silence. Then a quiet, broken whisper. I don't know how to stop him. Nathan closed. His eyes. His voice was steady when he spoke again. Then let me help you. Nathan hadn't slept. He had spent the night driving, thinking, replaying every conversation with Ellie, every warning from Marcus. The words, I don't know how to stop him, echoed in his head, looping like a broken record. Dawn broke over. Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. Nathan parked his truck outside his house, his body heavy with exhaustion, but his mind wouldn't rest. Ellie was making a mistake. He knew it, she knew it, but she was still willing to walk into the fire alone, and that terrified him. Lucas was already awake when Nathan walked inside, still in the same clothes from the night before. His son sat at the kitchen table, pouring cereal into a bowl, his eyes flicking up at his father's disheveled appearance. Lucas frowned. You look like you fought a bear. Nathan let out a tired chuckle, running a hand over his face. Yeah, well, something like that. Lucas studied him for a moment before speaking again. Is this about Sophie's mom? Nathan stilled. Lucas wasn't a kid who missed much. Too much of his childhood had been spent watching his father try to hold things together. Nathan sighed, pulling out a chair. Yeah, bud, it is. Lucas hesitated. Are you gonna leave her? Alone? Because I don't think you should. Nathan blinked, caught off guard. Why's that? Lucas shrugged, stirring his cereal absent-mindedly. Because you like her, and she likes you, and Sophie says her mom's happier when you're around. Nathan exhaled slowly. Leave it to a 10-year-old to cut through the mess of emotions and say the truth outright. Lucas glanced up, his expression serious. Are you gonna let Marcus win? Nathan's jaw tightened. No, he wasn't. Ellie stood in front of the mirror, smoothing her hands down the fabric of her blouse. She looked, composed, in control, every inch the powerful CEO the world expected her to be, but inside she was crumbling. Marcus's threats had been clear. Choose wisely, Ellie. Walk away from Cole, or I make things messy for you. And for Sophie. She had spent the night staring at the ceiling, thinking of every possible outcome, every way she could fight back. But Marcus knew how to twist the system, how to weaponize power, and that left Ellie with only one option. She picked up her phone, hesitating only for a moment before dialing. Nathan answered on the second ring. "Ellie?" She swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the dresser. "I need to see you." A beat of silence. Then, "I'm on my way." Nathan arrived at Ellie's house 20 minutes later. She met him outside, arms crossed, her face carefully neutral. But he saw it. The tightness in her jaw, the way her hands clenched just a little too tightly. Nathan stepped closer. "Talk to me." Ellie inhaled sharply. This was harder than she expected. "I need to end this," she said, forcing the words out before she lost her nerve. Nathan's expression didn't change. "And what?" Ellie lifted her chin. "This, us." Silence stretched between them. Nathan's eyes darkened, his posture tensing. "Because Marcus told you to?" Ellie's stomach twisted. "Because I have to protect my daughter." Nathan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Ellie, listen to me." "No, Nathan," she cut him off, her voice breaking slightly. "You don't understand. You don't know what he's capable of." Nathan's jaw clenched. "Then, tell me." Ellie hesitated, but then she shook her head. She couldn't drag him into this. "I can't," she whispered. Nathan stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he exhaled. "Ellie, I need you to hear me," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever Marcus is trying to do, he only wins if you let him." Ellie closed her eyes briefly. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But Sophie's safety was the only thing that mattered. "I'm sorry, Nathan." Nathan stepped closer, searching her face, waiting for her to change her mind. She didn't. Finally, after what felt like forever, Nathan nodded. "All right," he said quietly. "If that's what you want." Ellie didn't respond. Nathan swallowed hard, his jaw tight. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, and Ellie let him go. Even though every part of her wanted to chase after him, Nathan didn't remember the drive back home. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing. This wasn't over. Ellie was scared. He had seen it in her eyes, heard it in her voice, but she was too damn stubborn to admit it. And Marcus was counting on that. Nathan parked outside his house and pulled out his phone. He wasn't going to sit back and let Marcus win. If Ellie wouldn't fight for herself, then Nathan was damn sure going to fight for her. He dialed a number. The phone rang twice before a deep voice answered. "Nate?" Nathan exhaled. "Hey, Jake, I need a favor." Jake Turner, his old firefighter buddy, the guy who still had connections in places Nathan didn't. Jake paused. "This about that." "Marcus guy?" Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. "Yeah." Jake let out a low whistle. "Figured it might be. Word is, he's got some bad history." "What exactly are you looking for?" Nathan's jaw set. "Everything." That night, Ellie sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. Her chest ached. It had only been hours since she told Nathan goodbye, but already the absence of him felt unbearable. Sophie peeked her head in. "Mom?" Ellie straightened. "Yes, sweetheart." Sophie hesitated. "Is Nathan coming back?" Ellie's throat tightened. "No, honey." Sophie's face fell. "But why?" Ellie tried to smile, but it felt hollow. "Sometimes things don't work out." Sophie frowned. "But you're sad." Ellie looked away. "Damn it, this wasn't how it was supposed to be." "Mom." Ellie glanced back. Sophie bit her lip. "If something makes you happy, shouldn't you fight for it?" Ellie's breath caught. Sophie's words were simple, honest, true. And in that moment, Ellie realized she had made a mistake, a terrible, heartbreaking mistake. She had let Marcus scare her into giving up the one person who actually cared, and she wasn't sure if she could fix it. Nathan sat on his porch, his mind racing. His phone buzzed. He glanced down. Ellie. His heart pounded. He picked up. Ellie? Her voice was soft, unsteady. Nathan, I think I made the wrong choice. Nathan closed his eyes, relief washing over him. Yeah, he murmured. I think you did too. A pause. Then Ellie exhaled. I need your help. Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. I'm already on it. Nathan didn't hesitate. The second Ellie whispered, I need your help. Something in him clicked into place. He had spent his whole life running into burning buildings, pulling people from the flames, facing danger head-on. This was no different, except this time he wasn't just saving a stranger. He was fighting for the woman he loved. Nathan hung up the phone and immediately dialed Jake Turner. His old firefighting buddy answered on the first ring. Tell me you got something, Nathan said without preamble. Jake sighed. Marcus Hensley is dirtier than a landfill. The guy's been laundering money through fake shell companies, skimming off investments. He's careful, though. Uses middlemen. Buries everything under layers of bureaucracy. But I found something he didn't cover up well. Nathan's grip tightened. What is it? A failed investment in a construction deal last year. It collapsed, and he tried to pin it on a lower-level executive. But the paper trail leads right back to him. Nathan exhaled sharply. So if we expose this, it won't take him down completely, but it'll be enough to keep him too busy dealing with legal trouble to come after Ellie. Nathan's jaw clenched. Send me everything you've got. Jake hesitated. You sure about this, Nate? Going up against a guy like him? Nathan's voice was firm. I'm not letting him win. Ellie paced the length of her living room, her fingers clenching and unclenching at her sides. She had spent years building walls, protecting herself, convincing herself that she didn't need anyone. But standing here now, knowing Nathan was out there fighting for her when she hadn't even fought for herself, she felt ashamed, and for the first time in a long time, she was afraid. Not of Marcus, not of losing everything she had built. She was afraid of what it would mean to finally let someone in. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Nathan! He stepped inside, his presence filling the room instantly, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burned with purpose. Ellie swallowed hard. Did you find something? Nathan nodded, stepping closer, enough to make sure Marcus won't touch you again. Ellie's breath caught. How? Nathan pulled out a folder, setting it on the coffee table. Proof that he's been laundering. Money. If we take this to the right people, it'll bury him in lawsuits. Ellie stared at the folder, then back at Nathan. He was handing her a way out, a way to finally be free. But more than that, he was standing beside her, unwavering, refusing to let her fight this alone. Something inside her broke. She stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. Why are you doing this? Nathan's gaze softened. Because I love you. Ellie sucked in a sharp breath. Nathan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I love you, Ellie, and I know you're scared. Hell, I am too. But I'm not going anywhere. Ellie's heart pounded. She had spent so much time convincing herself that love was a weakness, a liability. But standing here now, looking into Nathan's steady, unflinching eyes, she realized she had been wrong. Tears burned at the edges of her vision. She stepped closer, hesitated only for a moment, and then she kissed him. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It wasn't polite or hesitant. It was desperate, raw, filled with every unspoken word, every moment. She had pushed him away, only to crave his presence more. Nathan responded immediately, his hands pulling her closer, anchoring her to him. This was real. This was home. When they finally pulled apart, Ellie whispered, I love you too. Nathan closed his eyes for a brief second, as if letting those words settle deep into his soul. Then he rested his forehead against hers. Good. Now let's finish this. The next morning, Ellie walked into her office, not as a woman running, from her past, but as a woman ready to take control of her future. Marcus was already waiting for her, a smug smirk on his face. "I assume you've come to your senses." Ellie met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Actually, yes." Marcus leaned back, pleased. "Glad to hear it." Ellie reached into her bag, pulled out the folder Nathan had given her, and slid it across the table. Marcus's smirk faltered. Ellie's voice was calm but razor-sharp. "This is everything I need to take you down. Every shady deal, every illegal wire transfer. And if you so much as breathe in my direction again, I will personally make sure you rot in a prison cell." Marcus's face darkened. "You wouldn't—" Ellie leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Try me." Silence. Then Marcus stood, shoving the folder back toward her. "You've made a mistake, Ellie." Ellie didn't flinch. "No, I finally did something right." Marcus's jaw clenched. But this time there was no threat, no smug retort, because for the first time he had lost. And Ellie Sinclair, she had won. Later that evening, Ellie stood outside Nathan's garage, watching as he wiped grease from his hands. He turned, smiling when he saw her. "Hey, stranger." Ellie exhaled. "It's done." Nathan nodded. "I know." Ellie hesitated. "I don't know what happens next." Nathan smirked. "Then let's figure it out together." Ellie took a deep breath. For once in her life, she was okay with not having all the answers. She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. Nathan squeezed gently. No more fear, no more running. Just them. And for the first time in a long time, Ellie knew. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Willow Creek. But for Nathan, the warmth in the sky was nothing compared to the warmth spreading through his chest. He stood outside Ellie's house, hands tucked into his jacket pockets, waiting. It had been 2 days since Marcus had walked away, defeated. 2 days since Ellie had taken control of her life. 2 days since she had walked into his garage, her expression soft but determined, and told him she was ready for something real, something that didn't come with conditions or fear. Now, she was inviting him into her world, not the high-rise boardrooms or the polished facade, but the part that mattered most. The part that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with family. Tonight, he was having dinner with her and Sophie, and it felt like the most important thing he'd ever done. The door opened before he could knock, and Sophie burst out onto the porch, her blonde curls bouncing as she threw her arms around him. "Nathan!" he chuckled, steadying himself as he lifted her slightly. "Hey, kiddo!" She pulled back just enough to beam at him. "Mom made spaghetti and she didn't even burn it." Nathan arched a brow, glancing at Ellie, who appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, an amused smirk on her lips. "Spaghetti is perfectly within my skill set," she said dryly. Nathan grinned. "I'll be the judge of that." Sophie giggled and grabbed his hand, dragging him inside. "Come on, you have to sit next to me." Nathan glanced at Ellie, who shook her head fondly as if to say, "Good luck arguing with her." And for the first time, he didn't feel like an outsider stepping into someone else's life. He felt like he belonged. Dinner was loud, not in the way fancy restaurants were, with the quiet hum of conversation and the clinking of wine glasses, but in a way that felt real. Laughter filled the room. Sophie's excited chatter bouncing off the walls, Nathan teasing Ellie about her cooking, Ellie pretending to be offended. It was easy, effortless, and it hit Nathan all at once. This was what he'd been missing, not just a relationship, not just someone to come home to, a family. He hadn't realized how much he wanted it until now. Halfway through dinner, Sophie suddenly put her fork down, her expression thoughtful. "Nathan?" He glanced at her. "Yeah?" She tilted her head. "Are you gonna marry my mom?" Ellie choked on her wine. Nathan stilled, blinking at the 7-year-old, currently looking at him like she was just asking about the weather. Ellie recovered first. "Sophie," Sophie shrugged. "What? It's a valid question." Nathan bit the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. This kid was something else. Ellie shot him an apologetic look, but Nathan just smirked. He turned back to Sophie. "Well," he said slowly, "that's kind of up to your mom, don't you think?" Sophie considered this, then turned to Ellie. "Mom?" Ellie sighed dramatically, rubbing her temples. "This was not on the menu for tonight." Nathan chuckled, shaking his head. "Tell you what, kiddo, how about we just enjoy our spaghetti? For now?" Sophie huffed but nodded. "Fine, but I still think you should." Nathan glanced at Ellie, who was avoiding his gaze, her cheeks slightly flushed. And in that moment, he knew this wasn't just a temporary thing. Whatever this was, him, Ellie, Sophie, it was real, and he wasn't going anywhere. Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Nathan and Ellie stood outside on the porch, the night air cool against their skin. Ellie wrapped her arms around herself, staring up at the sky. "She really likes you." Nathan leaned against the railing, watching her. "Yeah, I got that impression." Ellie exhaled softly. "I don't think she's ever been this happy." Nathan studied her, his voice gentle. "And you?" Ellie hesitated, then turned to face him. "I think I'm still getting used to this." Nathan nodded. "Fair." A pause, then softer. "But yes, I'm happy." Nathan's chest tightened. This woman, who had spent so long building walls, who had convinced herself she didn't need anyone, she was letting him in, and that meant everything. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Me too." Ellie squeezed his hand lightly. "So, do I pass the spaghetti test?" Nathan chuckled. "You do." "Barely." Ellie gasped, nudging him playfully. "I'll have you know, Sophie said it was delicious." Nathan smirked. "Kid's got a good heart." "Bad taste, but a good heart." Ellie laughed, shaking her head. And just like that, it was easy again. No fear, no uncertainty, just them. The next morning, Nathan was working at the garage when a familiar car pulled up. His muscles tensed the second he saw who it was. Marcus. Nathan exhaled slowly, wiping his hands on a rag as the man stepped out of his car, adjusting his suit like he owned the place. Nathan crossed his arms. "You lost, Hensley," Marcus smirked. "Not at all." Nathan narrowed his eyes. "What do you want?" Marcus let out a sigh, almost as if he were bored. "I came to offer you something." Nathan arched a brow. "That's so," Marcus nodded. "A chance to walk away." Nathan's jaw tightened. Marcus shrugged. "Look, I get it. You're the hero. The guy who swoops in, saves the girl, gets the happy ending. But let's be real, Nathan. You don't belong in Ellie's world. And deep down, you know that." Nathan didn't blink. He had spent years doubting himself, wondering if he was enough. But not anymore. He took a slow step forward, his voice calm but firm. "You know the difference between us, Marcus. You think love is something you control, something you win." Nathan's expression hardened. "But love isn't about power. It's about showing up every damn day. And I'll show up for Ellie and Sophie long after you've slithered back to whatever hole you crawled out of." Marcus's jaw clenched. Nathan smirked. "That offer to walk away, you can shove it." Marcus exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "You'll regret this." Nathan's gaze didn't waver. "No, but I bet you will." Marcus hesitated for half a second. Then, with a final glare, he turned and walked away. Nathan stood there, watching, as the car disappeared down the road, and for the first time he knew, without a doubt, that he had won. Not because he had beaten Marcus, but because he had chosen to fight for something that truly mattered, for love, for family, for a future. And nothing, not even Marcus Hensley, was going to take that away from him. The sun was setting over Willow Creek, painting the sky in soft streaks of orange and pink. The warm glow stretched over the rolling hills, casting long shadows against the quiet streets. Nathan stood outside Ellie's house, hands resting on his hips, watching as Sophie and Lucas chased each other across the lawn. Their laughter rang through the air, unburdened, free. It was a sound he never thought he'd have in his life again, and yet here he was, his chest tightened, not with fear, but with something deeper, something real. Behind him, the front door creaked open, and Ellie stepped outside, a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't say anything right away, just stood beside him, watching their children play. Nathan exhaled, glancing at her. "Not a bad view," Ellie smirked. "I was just thinking the same thing." Nathan turned to fully face her. "You okay?" Ellie met his gaze, and for the first time in a long time she looked at peace. "I think so," she admitted. "For the first time in years, I really think I am." Nathan studied her, noting the softness in her expression, the absence of the weight she had carried for so long. She was free, and it was beautiful. A week had passed since Marcus had slithered out of town defeated. Ellie had used the evidence Nathan found to ensure he wouldn't be able to manipulate her ever again. No more threats, no more fear. She was finally in control of her own life. And this time, she wasn't alone. Nathan had been by her side every step of the way, not trying to fix everything for her, not trying to take over, just standing there, solid and steady, reminding her that she didn't have to carry the weight alone anymore. It had taken her years to realize that strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about knowing when to let someone stand beside you, and Nathan Cole had stood beside her when she needed it the most. That evening, after dinner, Nathan and Ellie sat on the back porch, the night air cool against their skin. Sophie and Lucas had fallen asleep on the couch inside, tangled up in a mess of blankets after watching a movie. Ellie took a sip of wine, then set the glass down, turning toward Nathan. "I have a question," she said softly. Nathan raised a brow. "All right." "Shoot." She hesitated, then exhaled. "Are you happy here?" Nathan blinked, as if the question had caught him off guard. He looked around at the house, at the dim glow of the porch lights, at the stars stretching endlessly above them. Then, finally, he looked at her. "Yeah," he murmured. "I really am." Ellie swallowed, something flickering in her expression. "I don't want this to be temporary." Nathan's heart pounded. Ellie took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stay." Nathan's chest tightened. "You sure?" Ellie nodded. "Yes." Nathan searched her face, looking for hesitation, but there was none, just certainty and love. Nathan exhaled, then smiled. "Then I'm staying." Ellie let out a soft laugh, relief washing over her. Nathan reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Ellie?" She looked up. Nathan's voice was gentle. "I'm all in. You, me, Sophie, Lucas, all of it." Ellie squeezed his hand. "Me too." And just like that, there was no more uncertainty, no more fear, just love. A few weeks later, Nathan stood in the backyard, flipping burgers on the grill, while Sophie and Lucas ran through the sprinklers, laughing as they got soaked. Ellie sat on the porch, watching them with a smile that could light up the whole damn town. Nathan turned to her, shaking his head in amusement. "You sure you're okay with all this chaos?" Ellie smirked. "I think I love it." Nathan chuckled, flipping a burger. Who would have thought? Eleanor Sinclair, CEO, embracing backyard cookouts and sprinkler races. Ellie leaned back in her chair, stretching her legs out. "Turns out, happiness isn't where I thought it would be." Nathan met her gaze, something warm and unspoken passing between them. Then, before he could think too much about it, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Ellie stilled. Nathan exhaled, stepping closer. "I was gonna wait," he admitted. "Make it some big, dramatic moment. But that's not us, is it? Ellie's breath hitched. Nathan knelt, flipping open the box to reveal a simple, elegant diamond ring. "Ellie," he said softly, "marry me." Tears welled in Ellie's eyes. Nathan smiled. "Not because it's expected, not because of what people think. Just because I love you, and I want forever with you." Ellie inhaled sharply, and then she nodded. "Yes." Nathan's heart nearly burst. She laughed, wiping away a tear. "Yes, Nathan, 100 times, yes." Nathan grinned, sliding the ring onto her finger before pulling her into a deep, slow kiss. When they finally pulled apart, Sophie and Lucas were standing nearby, eyes wide. Sophie gasped. "Are we a family now?" Nathan chuckled, glancing at Ellie. "What do you think?" Ellie smirked. "I think we already were." Sophie and Lucas cheered, running toward them, wrapping their arms around their parents. Nathan held them close, his heart full. This was it. The life he had never thought he'd have again, the love he had never expected to find, and he wouldn't change a single thing. As the sun set behind them, casting the world in gold, Nathan kissed Ellie once more, knowing this was just the beginning. As this story comes to an end, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let me know. It's always incredible to see how stories bring people together from all over the world. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more uplifting tales about love, second chances, and the unexpected moments that change our lives forever. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thank you so much for being here, for watching, and for sharing this journey with me. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to share even more beautiful stories with you. Until next time, stay inspired, stay hopeful, and never stop believing in the magic of love.